Hey, hopefully we're live and everything's going good. We've got the audio, we've got a guest this week. We've got Ryan's back for another round. And this is Comics Are Rad, where we have a chat about comic books, about comic book culture, collecting, the stories, the artists, the books, everything. And um, yeah, this is episode 3. Brian, how you going?
I'm good. How are you?
I am good. And hello to Pandemonium in the chat. Um, so this is episode 3, and from the sounds of it, it's going to get a little bit Star Warsy in here. Um, so Ryan, why don't you start us off and tell us what something that you want to talk about today?
Okay. So I was sort of a bit bad because I didn't do much reading over the past week or so. But what I did do is have a big deep dive into the Rebellion. I started watching season one of Andor, finished off season two, rolled that into Rogue One, into A New Hope. Um, Watched The Empire Strikes Back last night, so I'm very much deep into the Star Wars universe right now. Um, I've also um, I intend on finishing this comic series after I watch Return of the Jedi, but um, I have recently been collecting. I mean, it's been finished for a couple of months, I guess. The what did they call them? Like Age of the Rebellion or something series. There was two. I think there were two connecting series, like Age of the Resistance and Age of the Rebellion, or something that were released recently. That are sort of start to bridge the gap between Return of the Jedi and the Force Awakens. So we get to see a little bit more about what Luke and the crew got up to post Return of the Jedi. Um, but I really wanted to talk about Andor
Mm,
because I've been a Star Wars fan my whole life, very much raised on sci-fi fantasy, pop culture, and for a long time we didn't we had that original trilogy, and then we had nothing,
mm-hmm.
and then I mean, I was the perfect age for the Phantom Menace when it came out. I was 12 years old when that hit cinemas. So, to me, uh, seeing the Jedi at full force, seeing Darth Maul was sort of like absolutely my wheelhouse as a 12-year-old. Um, for the most part, I still enjoy that prequel trilogy for what it was, even though it's probably a little bit in the camp side of things now. It's got a little bit of 1966 Batman going on about it. Um, but and then we had the sequel trilogy, I guess, which is the most divisive thing that you can probably talk about in Star Wars, unless you're talking about um, was Jar Jar Binks secretly a Sith Lord the whole time. Um, um, but then Andor did what I always wanted. One of the things I always wanted, and that was to dig back into that really important foundational era of Star Wars in a way that felt authentic. Like it's the most George Lucas Star Wars feeling expanded material that has been released since the episodes 4, 5, and 6. It looks like it's got that same sort of vintage world
Mm,
look about it. Um, the costumes all sort of stack up to what we're used to seeing for those of us that have spent, hundreds of hours poring over those three original films. It's got the ships that we love. It's got cameos from characters that we love, but then it takes the story in a whole new direction by introducing you to someone who is absolutely pivotal to the rebellion reaching the point where it can legitimately take on an empire that's sort of starting to eat itself from the inside. Um, and we know nothing about him up until Rogue One. I mean, of course, these characters don't exist until they're written. Um, but I don't know. I guess I like to take a more imaginative approach to storytelling. Sometimes I like to think of the worlds that exist, as almost like living entities as is in and of themselves. So I like to think that while we're getting introduced to Luke on Tatooine, there is all this really interesting stuff that was going on at that
Mm.
time, and now we're getting to learn about the people that were involved in ensuring that there was victory for the rebellion. Um, and they take a guy who, what's so brilliant about it is they take a guy who is not immediately likable and put him in situation after situation after situation in which he has to prove his character in a very natural way. Like it doesn't feel forced. It feels like a guy who's been brought up in a set of circumstances. He gets put into this environment. He gets exposed to all these new ideologies, all these new events. He sort of gets thrust into a narrative that's larger than himself. And we slowly see the cynic get chipped away until like the true believer is revealed. And I think that's a really interesting way to approach that character. Like I think we saw it a little bit in Han Solo in the
Mm.
original trilogy. Like he thinks the Force is a crock. He doesn't want to fight for the rebellion. He thinks that his priorities lie elsewhere in the universe, even though things aren't looking too good. Um, and Cassian is very much in that same mold. He's a guy that never wanted the responsibility of having to build something larger than himself, but when the chips fall, he's always in a position to pick them up and carry the ball and move forward. Um, and I think the way that Tony Gilroy and his team have sort of crafted this expanded universe um, has shown, I think, a very realistic. Um, and I've read a lot of articles that compare some of the writing and the plot points and things like that between elements, not obviously fictionalized, but elements of real life spycraft, World War II, um, things in that ilk. Um, and it's sort of everyone sort of is appreciating the fact that this is a relatively solid uh, narrative about how to build like grassroots resistance. And I think it's come along. Like we look at um, not not to get political on the stream at all, but we look at like so much of what's happening in the world right now. Like not just you know things that are happening here locally, but things that are happening overseas in different parts of the world. Um, and I feel like it's a good time to have a really strong, well written, well performed, accurate narrative out there about some of the hard choices that have to be made, like for us to be um, safe and secure against ill will. Um, but I think that's been the Star Wars uh, sort of mantra from the beginning. Is like we should never ever take peace for granted. You know, like all it takes is a couple of people who think that they have everyone's best interests at heart when really they only have their own self interest at heart to do a lot of damage. I mean, luckily, I think that the only planet that we're going to be blowing up anytime soon is unfortunately going to be our own. So I don't think we have to worry about a Death Star per se. Um, but yeah, I love the way, if I remember correctly, I mean, I'm poring over the dialogue in my mind right now, and over 24 hours of really complex dramatic narrative, we don't hear the word Jedi uttered a single time
Mm.
throughout two series. Um, and what I love about that is that you make this jump then from Andor into Rogue One into A New Hope. And when you watch them sort of back to back, you're kind of there with Luke and Leia and Han for this sort of rediscovery of this thing. The Force has been something that hasn't been involved. Um, I believe from I don't know if my timeline is entirely accurate, but I believe from the first episode of Andor season one to the events of A New Hope is about 5 years of time. So we spent a lot of time in this universe where all like the thing that could have helped the most is like a Jedi, a little bit of magic being put out into the world to give people a little bit of hope, and it's completely absent from the narrative until we get to that final moment of the sort of confrontation between the rebellion and the Empire. And I kind of love that. Like, I kind of love the fact that we've established that 90% of the work to get to this point was done by real people that had no ability to manipulate the force. They didn't have lightsabers. They didn't have this mythological aura about them. Um, and it's sort of like it makes it more meaningful, I guess, when that part of the story does sort of turn and come alive again. Um, so yeah, that's where I've been at. I've been so deep into Star Wars. Um, I mean, between my God, like 30 plus hours of content, um, almost nonstop, uh, to get to this point with, another film and then, a comic book series to go. Um, yeah, it's it's been a good journey. Like it's been fun. It's been, especially up until this point. Sorry, up until this point, it had maybe been, I don't know, 2 or 3 years since I probably sat down and watched the original trilogy like uninterrupted. There wasn't just like background viewing, but actually like sitting and listening to the dialogue and watching the scenes unfold, all that sort of stuff. Um, which I mean, I encourage people to do that with all their favorite movies, or all the movies that they haven't seen for a while. We're sort of like in this culture now. We're so time poor due to work and other commitments that we so often background all these things, and then you can realize that yeah, you've had a movie that you love playing on the background like 20 times in the past 5 years, but maybe one time out of that 20 times have you actually sat down and watched the film that you really enjoy. Uh, so that, I guess that was kind of a nice experience too. It's like recapturing why I really have enjoyed and connected with these movies and now these TV series and stuff in the first place. That was a lot of talking.
Well, we got Jeffries in the chat. It says, "G'day, legends. Comics are rad," and
Comics
I
are
agree.
rad, thank
Comics
you.
are rad. And so to keep it on the Star Wars thing, even though I think my camera's backwards on Discord, but this is the new Ewoks series. We've got Orlando, Lopez, Braga, and Fabella on the credits. And like Ryan was saying, when Jedi came out, I was 6 and I saw it in the cinemas. And I think I saw Empire in the cinemas, but I was 2, so I can't remember actually watching it in the cinema. But yeah, so there's a there's some sort of theory about like middle-aged men who like Ewoks, and it's that if you were people my age were little kids when Jedi came out. So Jedi is my favorite of the Star Warses, or the original 3. And um yeah, I've always liked Ewoks. I like the as an adult, I like the idea of the Stone Age little creatures beating up the forces of the bad guys who have mechs and laser guns and stuff. And we got Nick May saying radicals are comedic, which is also true. So this is the new Ewoks comic, and I've got a sort of a dodgy relationship with modern comics. Whenever I try and read a new like a comic off the shelves, I'm always disappointed. So I tend to read like older 80s and 70s Marvel stuff a lot, and I actually quite enjoyed this one. I got the first 3 just to get them because they were all there on the shelves at Comics R Us in Windsor, and it turned out to be a really good comic book. And it's it has a little bit of a feeling of a like a Saturday morning cartoon, but it's a bit um it's a edgier or mature, like themed, not too much, but the artwork's really nice. It's that looks like a trace of a movie shot from Jedi, but it's set after Jedi. So the um the rebel forces have gone home, and then the uh the Empire left a weapons storage thing on Endor, and there's a Imperial officer and some bounty hunters and a stormtrooper. So that's those guys. I think the two up the back are two of the ones from in Empire Strikes Back when they reveal Boba Fett, and then there's the like Dengar and Bosk, and then there's 2 other guys I think that they never do anything, but they're such cool characters because they just look cool. But they're trying to find the weapons cache thing, and they come across the Ewok village, and what's it called? Trouble ensues, and it's fun. If you like Ewoks, I would recommend it. And it also shows off the other fauna on Endor, because they mostly just show the Ewoks in the movies, but in the Caravan of Courage and the other ones and the cartoon, the Ewoks cartoon, there was the green What are they called? There's the green. Here we go. The little gremlin guys. So they've folded that in. They've got all the dangerous fauna, even though the Ewoks are kind of dangerous too. But it's it helps to paint the 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 forest moon as how dangerous it is and how tough the Ewoks are to survive in such a hostile environment. So I've read the first three. I got four the other day and haven't read that yet. And that's the Gorax from one of the other movies. The
I was going to
character.
say, I recognize that guy.
Yeah, he was like a giant. Oh, there's a ATST in the background there too. We got Pandemonium says the Ewok thing turned up in How I Met Your Mother when Barney works out. A woman was lying about her age because she didn't like Ewoks. So that's you can tell someone's age by if they like Ewoks or not. And I like Ewoks. I also want to do a trilogy of stories about um I want to call it the Star Wars trilogy, and it's like a autobiographical thing about these three figures, which there was some sort of tragedy involved with it with each figure. And when I was a little kid, I just have to get the time to actually sit down and draw it and write it and stuff. But I've got Jeffrey saying, "Have you read the Tales of the Jedi comics from Dark Horse in the 90s? They were rad. Exokun had a cool double-bladed lightsaber." I have read a bunch of the Dark Horse Star Wars stuff. I've got a bunch in my collection that my friend gave to me because he was collecting them and had to move and couldn't take them with him. And in between, like Jedi from 86 to 99 or whatever it was when uh, the new Star Warses came out, the the Dark Horse comic books was basically the only fix of Star Wars you could get. I think there was some novels and stuff, but yeah,
But there were a lot of novels. That was
okay,
pretty much how it all survived. Yeah, that expanded universe novels.
yeah, and the Dark Horse comics, and it was all in canon too. And there's I think there's a couple of games as well. There's a fair few games from LucasArts, but it is I think it's called the Dark Ages, that period from the from Jedi to the prequels.
My vague understanding of the original plans for the sequel trilogy is that all that was still considered canon in George Lucas's sequel trilogy idea. Yeah, I believe what we ended up getting is George Lucas gave them some outlines and said, "Hey, I've been working on this idea for quite a long time. Like, here you go. This is what happens after Return of the Jedi." And Disney pretty much said, "Cool, thanks." Um, and then they made all that stuff. Legends material is what they call it now. Um, so all that stuff that used to be canon is now just considered uh, myth within the Star Wars universe.
We got
Yeah,
Jeffrey with another comment saying Brisbane used to have an artist that did covers for some of those, and he lives in Melbourne now. Is that Greg Gates? He did a few Star Wars things, I think. Is that his name? Hmm.
someone Google it in the chat and let us know.
Hugh Fleming.
I've always um, I've always enjoyed the Ewoks. Maybe because I started watching the movies so young that I was probably around that same age that you were later on. watching Return of the Jedi for the first time, at least cognizantly watching it. And I had I grew up watching Caravan of Courage, that movie,
Mm.
um, which, I mean, I'm going to throw it out there. I think it still holds up. People can trash it. I don't like people trashing it because I feel like it still holds up and it holds its own within the Star Wars universe. Like it's definitely a fun watch. Um, but I guess if one of those people that just can't jive with Ewoks, then there's probably no point. Um, but I also had the same connection to. Did you ever watch Droids? Did you watch the animated series from the
Yeah,
mid '80s? I loved that show. I thought it was so good. Like all these, we know that C3PO and R2D2 have been on all these crazy adventures, and then we finally get to see what they've been up to. Um, and they introduced so many amazing characters in some of these animated series that never show up again. Like they
mm.
never show up in any other literature. They don't show up in comics. They don't show up in books. Like they show up in these like 5, 6 episode arcs of this animated series from 1985, and then they disappear forever. Um, and god damn it, I want some of them back.
A great theme song too.
Yeah, that song was written and composed by Stuart Copeland, who played the drums for the Police.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that's a good fun factoid for everyone out there.
in trouble again. Hey, we've got Shawnee's here with yay, my notifications are finally working. It's good to have you back, Shawnee. So have you got you watched Andor and all those other stuff? Have you got any other things
Oh,
to talk
I was
about?
gonna. I had to buy this for
Oh,
my Black Series Cassian Andor
that looks cool.
figurine. Yeah, I wish they still had this particular one came out during the dark times of COVID when they were telling us that plastic was extinct, and so now they replaced it all with cardboard, and it doesn't have a little window anymore.
Oh yeah.
Um, and I, I've been on the cusp of impending moves like constantly, so it's still neatly sealed inside the box. But one day I will take him out and be a massive child and, and yeah, probably annoy my cat tremendously.
Good stuff.
I also one of the things that I love the most about Andor was the score. So the score was done by Nicholas Britell. Um, it's all on Spotify. If you've got Spotify, go listen to the Andor soundtrack. Whether you're cleaning the house or you're driving to work or you just want something that's going to kick ass and kind of simultaneously bum you out and then lift you up at the same time. It's amazing. And if you hunt for it, they did a very limited edition vinyl release of it, which I recommend tracking down if you're a nerd like me and you collect everything for some strange reason. Yeah.
So the with the Andor, do you have to watch any of the other series, or does it just slot into like before the Rogue One?
Yeah, so if you just start watching Andor from episode 1, just you can watch it all the way through. It has these. It actually does something. It takes something from comics that the comics has always done really well, and that's every 3 episodes is an arc within the season.
Oh yeah.
So it's like mini stories told. I mean, it's all Cassian. It's all continuing on from each other, but you know, these 3 episodes have a theme. These three have a theme. These three have a theme. So four blocks of 3 in each season, and then the pace starts to ramp up during season two because every three episodes um, take place a year before the Battle of Yavin. So, the first three episodes of season two are 4 years BBY. The next three are 3 years BBY. The next three
Okay.
are two
Yeah.
years BBY. Um, Leading up to, you know, I mean, it's not really spoiling anything because we know if you've seen Rogue One, you know that Cassian survives. Um, you don't know how changed he is from when you meet him at the start. You'll have to watch the show to find out. But one of the final scenes that we're left with in the final episode is Cassian's U-wing flying off from the base in Yavin to go and meet with um, probably meet with Tavik on the rings of Kafrine to get the information about Galen Erso and the super weapons. So um, it all really slots together super nicely. They did a fantastic job, and I can't imagine how frustrating it must have been at times to be making a show and want to take it in some certain directions and then realize we gotta be here at this point.
Mm.
We can't we can't change the trajectory because we already know what it connects to. We already know who's going to be there, so we know who's alive, who has to survive through to the end, you know, all that sort of fun information. Um, yeah, it's to me. I think it does a rare thing. We know with sci-fi, sometimes it's very particular. Star Wars is a little bit different because it's fantasy rather than hard science fiction.
Mm.
Um, you know, I grew up watching pretty much a cross section of all of it. But I know things like Star Trek is not everyone's cup of tea. Star Trek is not for everybody. Um, if you jive with it, cool. I feel like if you really do enjoy procedurals like Law and Order and stuff like that, and you've got a bit of a open mind to like science and technology and the future and all that sort of stuff, it probably is up your alley. Even if you've never checked it out, you probably would like it. Um, but Andor is kind of another beast altogether. It's the first time that someone's taken this genre in a long time and elevated it to a point where it can be compared with any great drama series that's been released in probably the past 50 years. Um, I would probably, for me personally, I would probably say Andor's maybe in my top five TV shows in general that I've ever seen. Um, and it's not just down to me being a massive Star Wars fan, but it's just that damn well written. Like absolutely phenomenal dialogue. The pacing is incredible. The character developments just blow you away. There's twists, there's turns. It's an emotional roller coaster. Uh, like Tony Gilroy, I mean, he did the Bourne Identity and the Bourne Supremacy. He did Michael Clayton. So he is well versed at ratcheting up the tension in a story, and he manages to sort of do that like simmering time bomb sort of thing, but stretch it out over 24 hours of intense drama. Um, and I feel like even if you're not a Star Wars person, but you're a fan of television or you're just a fan of long form dramatic storytelling, um, it is absolutely in your wheelhouse. You just need to turn off that bit of your mind that goes Star Wars. Ugh, I don't like Star Wars, and give it a crack because it deserves it. It's one of those shows. It truly has worked hard for it, and it deserves your attention.
There you go. We got Nathan in the chat saying Trek best. So back in the day, I thought I didn't like Star Trek, but whenever the Next Generation was on TV, I would always watch it. So you know, the the Star Trek had that weird thing too in the '90s where, or in that there's that big gap from the original series up until Next Generation, and I can't remember. It was probably because of how old I was that I wasn't allowed to stay up late until like the early '90s, and it was on at like 11:30 or something. But
Well, it was 21 years between
hmm,
series, um, which is, it's rivaling that distance between uh, Return of the Jedi and Episode One.
hmm,
Like 1987, Next Generation premiered.
yeah, and the original series was on in the '60s, I think.
Yeah, 1966. It's the same year as Batman.
Yeah,
Which I gotta say, if you were a geek back in the '60s, like there was a lot going on for you.
but that Batman series was huge in the '80s as well. That was always on TV. Speaking of Batman, I've got another comic book, which is GI Joe: The Real American Hero, issue 21. This is the new reprint from Skybound. I think it's backwards,
Nice.
but um, yeah. So this is the silent issue, and it's often talked about. And I do have the omnibus, which has the first 50 issues, so I'm assuming that this is in there as well. But I forgot at the time when I was buying this because it's like, oh, they've reprinted the Snake Eyes silent issue, so I just grabbed it. And the Skybound reprint has been doing a really great job with the colors and the paper. Like this is proper old comic book um, newsprint
That's
stuff,
very cool.
and the printings, it's a little bit like nicer than uh, what it would have been back in the mid '80s when this came out. But it's still pretty a good representation of that style of printing. And it's got a cardstock cover, which I didn't like when I first picked it up because it doesn't feel like an old comic where with the Marvel that's and DC uh, that are doing the reprints with all the old ads and stuff in them. They have the proper like floppy comic book covers. But that aside, actually reading the book, it's it's really good. So the story behind why it's got no uh, words is they had 3 weeks to get a book out, and Larry Hama said, "We can do it if we don't letter it." So he did the breakdown. So he was writing it as he was drawing it, and then sending the pages off as soon as they were done to Steve Lealoha, who did the inks or the finishes. So he would have done very rough pencils, which would have had basically the figures and the like the layouts of the for this page where the building is and the mountains, and then Lealoha would have done all the all the detail stuff, and it's really good. It's a classic issue like in American comic book like just lore. There's some issues that um just gain this kind of mythological status like the all splash page issue of Thor and stuff, and the silent GI Joe issue is another one, and it's cool that they had to. It wasn't a choice that they made to do something. Like, it wasn't a Nazi fartsy thing. It was kind of a there was a deadline, kind of a working class decision, and because of the limitations of not having the word balloons to beef up the narrative and add flavor and context and stuff, which is like a lot of the function of the like having the words with the drawings in comic books, and to have a really solid like kind of moment to moment play of the action and the narrative that was happening in the book. And there's one bit that I really like where it cuts to Destro and he's looking at the game boards. But in the book, Storm Shadow kidnaps Scarlet and takes it to the copper base, and so he's got the players on the board, and Snake Eyes parachutes in to try and save her, and then when he it's really cool storytelling where he grabs the piece for Baroness and puts her on the table. It's really good. And also Scarlet escapes by herself without having to have the boys to come and rescue her.
I
But
think
yep.
Larry Hama is one of the most underrated pencilers that has ever worked in professional comics.
Mm.
Like, my God, that issue is phenomenal.
And to think that he wrote all the bios on the back of the toys, like their file cards. He wrote all of them, and for how big this book was really popular in the 80s and up into the 90s as well. And at the Marvel offices, the toy books like Transformers, even like Rom the Space Knight and stuff, were really looked down on, and how Harmer was able to mold it into a really beloved franchise that was like it was bigger than not in popularity but in scope of a narrative. It was bigger than the cartoons. It, it was just a crazy thing. Like the Transformers comics, they weren't that great, but they were good. They were like good enough for what they were, and the GI Joe just it became its own thing because of I suppose the vision of Larry and how he handled it.
And and they only gave it to Larry for that reason, is that they thought it was going to fail. So they
Mm.
thought, well, it'll be done in 3 issues and we won't have to hear from Larry again. So let's just put him on the book and he'll go away. Um, and he turned it into a bestseller. So game, set, match, Larry Hama.
What else is there? I've been watching the Crisis on Infinite Earths cartoon on Netflix. So there's three of them. I think I've seen two, and it's pretty good. I would say though that enough with the multiverse shit. Like everyone, just just stop it everywhere. And it's weird that like the with the history of DC with having the main guys like Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman all were in their own little separate universes. And then when Marvel came out and built the universe like book by book, so it all intertwined and matched, they wanted to bring it together. And one of the problems was that people would say, well, how does this character go? Because he already met Superman in another book, and now they're meeting for the first time. There was lots of continuity issues they had from the separate kind of universes, and so they came up with the Earth One, Earth Two, Earth Prime thing at some point, probably in the 60s, or I'm not entirely sure of when it was, but then that became such a big thing that it was so confusing because you could pick up a book and they'd be Batman would be hanging out with the Joker, they'd be best friends, and then in another one they're fighting, and the fans were like, "This none of this makes sense." So you had to have like a spreadsheet of which was the Earth Two. There's like I remember when I was a kid, I got a book where the Huntress was Batman and Catwoman's daughter, but that wasn't on the normal like the 80s DC universe that I was reading at the time. It wasn't part of that. It was different. So in the mid 80s they did Crisis on Infinite Earths where they got all the stuff and collapsed it into one thing, to one universe, and then slowly started it up again over. I think it would have been the like the 2000s thing, like when they brought back Barry Allen and
Like
um,
that post Infinite Crisis, I think it was like the they did this or Final Crisis or something. They did like a
there's too many crises.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, so
I think
they did the big event to collapse it to make it make sense, and then pulled it apart again, and it they just need to stop it with just Marvel and DC and everything that's doing multiverse, like that Deadpool movie with Deadpool and Wolverine. There was a fun bit where it went through all the different like versions of Wolverine, but they were mainly just costume changes, but they treated it like it was different universes. And then at the end, when there's a million Deadpools, it's like, well, here's if you have a superhero character, here's Super Guy, and here's Super Guy with a hat. It's here's Super Guy with two hats, and it's too much. This Nick May saying 0 hour. There was a lot of stuff I'd checked out by then. By the yeah, I read Robin up until issue 80, and then I was completely checked out of DC after I stopped reading Robin. Whenever that was.
I I love a good team book and I love a good event, and well, at least I used to. Now, before they were happening every 3 months, um, and I think that's when I realized that I'm not really a DC guy. Like, there's some titles I'll read for the creative team more than anything else. But on a whole, I'm not really like a huge fan of like the DC universe in general. And I think it was trying to read Crisis on Infinite Earths and getting like 40 pages in and just being like, you know what? I don't care. Like, I, I'm confused. It doesn't. It's not hitting me in the feels. Like, I'll go back to reading the more modern stuff that I'd sort of. I suppose it's kind of like when you watch an old TV series or something and it's very dated. I think maybe that's what it is. Like, it felt quite dated to me when I tried to read it compared to reading, what Snyder and Capullo were doing on like Court of the Owls with Batman, or even like the Jeff Johns Green Lantern Rebirth sort of era stuff, um, that was a little bit more complex in its storytelling. Um, and ooh, I'm gonna cop some heat for this one. Are we ready? Are we ready? I'm not a George Perez guy. Like,
Ooh.
yeah, I don't know what it is. Honestly, I don't know what it is, but it doesn't wow me like some of his contemporaries. Um, if I had to choose between reading a book drawn by John Byrne or reading a book drawn by George Perez, I'd choose John Byrne 100% of the time.
Mm.
Um, please send your hate mail to comics are rad.
Care of Ryan. And Perez is great. Perez was the like one of his big strengths was drawing tons of characters on a page. Like he was good at team books. If you check out the 70s and 80s stuff, you might like it more than some of the stuff he was doing like later on.
I mean, I have heard I have heard things like Teen Titans, like his run on Teen Titans is like foundational to modern superhero comics and stuff like that. I guess my first exposure was poor, so I've been like hesitant to go back and read more. Um, Especially, I don't know, maybe getting into some obscure characters from the Titans that I'm not too aware of will be exciting or something like that. But I just have to, at the moment, it feels like I have to like G myself up to do it. And it's probably not a good starting point,
Mm.
like having to like, convince myself to actually go and read it.
Got Nick May in the comments saying the new Teen Titans seemed amazing when it came out, but Byrne is my goat. So apparently, when Byrne was just starting to come up in Marvel and like really develop his style and get a fan base, that's when Perez jumped ship and went across the street to DC because he didn't want to be competing with Byrne because he could see the smoke was coming for him, and they tra-
Interesting.
traditionally had a huge rivalry. So they were the hot guys. They were the Jim Lee and Todd McFarlane of their day.
Okay. Interesting. Interesting.
Perez is great.
I mean,
Um,
I guess, yeah, I was just so wrapped up into Byrne, Cockrum, uh, Paul Smith, all that, basically everything that was going on with the X titles at the time, um, and then some of the stuff that was getting launched by Byrne, like his work on Iron Fist and stuff like that. Which, yeah, I kind of even now I feel like I can go back and read pretty much anything that Byrne was during that sort of powerhouse era where he really sort of became the guy. Um, but yeah, I think yeah, it has to just be that I'm not such a strong DC guy outside of like the tentpole characters, you know.
mm. Well, my favorite characters are DC characters, but I don't read as much or buy as much DC stuff. So like Batman, Ted Core, Blue Beetle, Amazing Man, Ambush Bug. They're like my favorite characters of all time. But I, if I have to just pick up a comic book, I'm gonna read a Marvel comic book, especially from the 70s and 80s and early 90s. It's gonna be Marvel.
DC still had some great stuff. Like I still do love Nightfall. You know,
Mm.
some of those character specific long form events. Um, yeah, I guess it's just when it got too deep into like the crossover multiverse stuff, like you're saying, um, it lost me.
Also, when I was like collecting Robin, where you'd get to the last page of the book and said this carries on in Green Arrow issue 36, and I'd or just as a principal would never buy that book to see, but just all right, well then we'll start a new story next month, and this one can go kick rocks down the road. Nick May saying struggling to get through Ambush Bug reread. Ambush Bug is one of the greatest characters ever created. Keith Giffen is the funniest superhero comic book person I think of all time. If you like the trencher, if you ever got into that, the ambush bugs very much on that sort of level. The thing with ambush bug, especially with the late 80s ones, and that would like went through into the 90s, is if you understood what was going on in comic books at that time, then it's super funny. Or if you have an idea of superhero comic book history, then it's basically just a big piss take of all comic books throughout the ages. That there's the Krakoa, the island that walks like a man sort of thing, or that sort of thing. There was a koala character. It was a giant koala, and I can't remember his name, but it was but such and such, the koala who walks like a man. And I think one of the villains was a sock. There was also an alien, but it's very funny.
I feel like they don't do books like that anymore. Like the 70s and the 80s was filled with humorous takes on the superhero genre.
Mm.
You know, things like Ambush Bug, The Tick, uh, you know,
Howard the Duck kind of.
how yeah. Even, you know, it wasn't just the indies that were doing that sort of stuff. Like even the big two got in on it. Um, and no one's really doing that anymore.
Mm. The sock character was called Argyle. I think it was like Argyle, perhaps. But yeah, it was a sock. Um, yeah, there was really something going on in the around 86, 87. These probably just post like Watchmen and Dark Knight, where Amazing Man, Ambush Bug got a book, and then the Justice League International kind of started. It was all around that same time, and Keith Giffen had his stinky little fingers in the Justice League and the Ambush Bug stuff, and they were taking risks and just letting funny, like actually funny comic books be produced. Like Amazing Man, I think it only went for 12 issues, but it's such a great series. I would recommend that to
There
anyone.
was a lot of pushback. There was a lot of pushback post Watchmen, post Dark Knight Returns, because all these people who'd been not just reading but working in comics for decades were not all on board.
Mm,
Like a lot of people were like, "This is not what comics is. This is too dark. This is not uh, what kids and young adults should be reading." And I think a lot of that stuff, like Howard the Duck and all that sort of stuff, that started to pop up again or um, become prominent post the angry years, is just as a response. Like people were, and even now, like it's more books on the shelf have that sort of bleak, dark sort of narrative energy than there are books that sort of play with the lightness of what it is to be a superhero. Um, Another book that was big for DC during that time, Dial H for Hero.
yeah,
You know, what a
that
completely ridiculous concept.
that was an old excuse me. So yeah, Dial H for Hero was a from this, I believe, the 70s, but you would, like, the kids would send in their ideas for heroes and villains, and for the no, I think it was for the powers that the two teenage kids would who were the heroes who would they dial their power, and the readers would send in the ideas, and then yeah, that got relaunched in the 80s or 90s or at some point.
And they even did a in the 2000s during the new 52 era, they did a relaunch of Dial H for Hero that was written by China Mieville, of all people. Like, China Mieville is one of the most important science fiction and weird literature authors in the history of the genre. And they asked him if he wanted to do a comic book series, and he said, "Yes, I will do a comic book series." They said, "China, what do you want to do? You can pick anything." He said, "I want to do Dial H for Hero."
Does it still have that concept of the readers
Yeah, it's still
pick the powers? Yeah.
not so much that I don't think it's necessarily. I mean, it still has the wheel, so it still has like the randomizer. Like when he gets into strife, like he's not actually 100% sure what power is going to come to the forefront. Um, so to some degree, yes, it does. It still plays with that. Um, yeah, it's still good. It's a fun one. They did a limited series. It got all the way through. Like, they told the story they want to tell. It got released as like a Dark Edition hardcover that's like impossible to find now. Um, but yeah, um, I don't know. If you're out there watching and you've got any say, maybe do something fun next time. Don't do Batman beating people to death. Do Batman winning a dance competition. That's what the people want to see.
Got Jeffries in the chat saying DC has some great recent reads: Absolute Batman, Hush 2, and Zatanna, all very good. He goes on with, I recently bought the large format Hush 2, it's A3 size. At first, I thought it was just for show, and now I go, wow, this is the size that the artist drew it at. It's very good.
Is that black and white on the inside? Is that right? Like, it's full size black and white, or is it color? Let us know,
Yeah.
because I'm aware of that oversize printing. I thought it was pretty cool, and the only reason why I didn't want to get one is because I thought, how the hell am I going to store this thing so that it doesn't get completely ruined? I've already got the giant size Behold Galactus hardcover that sits on my bookshelf, and that book is like 3 feet high. It's absolutely insane.
Yeah.
But it is Galactus sized book about Galactus. So I kind of dig it. I respect it, even though it makes my life hell.
So it's full color inside.
Full color? Okay, cool. That's interesting. Usually they reserve those sort of things for like the sort of director's cut, artist edition sort of
Mm.
format. So it's interesting to see they've done it full color.
It says the paper's not as good as the normal one.
Oh wow, that's disappointing then. I'm sure. I mean, I'm sure eventually they'll do like some sort of oversized hardcover collection once the whole thing is done. I mean, how many versions of Hush have we had since the 90s?
Mm.
I would hate to even guess how many versions of that have been released.
So is there any books or anything that's coming out that you're looking forward to?
I've got some. I mean, I've got some stuff I'm still going to pick up from my local comic book store. Um, there's a comic by, oh my god, I'm gonna butcher his name if I don't look it up. So just bear with me for 1 second, because I've been excited about this book, but I don't want to. I don't want to get it wrong. Of course, my phone's taking a million years to load now that I'm trying to find some more information. So, uh, It's called 7 Years in Darkness by Joseph Schmalke. Um, and the story is there's this Academy of Black Magic, and um, every 7 years, 72 children are taken into the academy to be tested, and only seven survive. Like so, every 7 years, this process comes where they take these children in, they test them for their abilities, and then only seven survive the trials. Um, and I'm looking forward to picking it up. I've been had my eye on it for a long time. Um, it's got a phenomenal art. Um, Even just the cover alone sold the book for me. So let me pull that up. It's simple, but like, how nice. How nice is that?
Oh yeah.
Sort of tells you what you're getting. It gives me a little bit, at least the mask and the robe. It gives me a little bit of like Enigma by Duncan uh, Fagredo, which was one of my favorite books. So even though it's, I mean, story wise, it's going to have nothing to do with that at all. But um, I don't know. They knew how to rope me in. They were like, just positive association with something we know that you like. We don't know you, but we'll just assume. Um, and yeah, so I've got to pick that up. Got to give that a read. Um, but man, it's just funny all the time. Oh, so my people might have heard if they watched me on week one, that I had a play premiering that week.
Yeah.
So it finished its run in Mont Bay. Um, Reviews were good, very happy. Crowd seemed to enjoy it. Um, and now we take a little bit of time off and we're preparing to play the Brisbane Anywhere Festival in July.
Sweet.
Um, so I'm just going to pimp that for a second. If anyone, if you like Dungeons and Dragons, if you like live theatre, comedy, just being able to go, relax, have a laugh, head to anywhere.is and look for Bawdy Tales and Critical Fails, a roleplay adventure. Um, it's by Roll Initiative Theatre Company, which I write for, and it's playing two venues in the end of July, August. Only doing 4 shows in that run. But if you're located in Brisbane, you want some fun night out, guaranteed to get a laugh. Please check it out. We would love that. Um, all my nerdy Brisbane people that I know, I'm looking at you. Uh, yeah, we'd love your support, and I think it's right up your alley for most of you.
Sweet. Jeffrey says, "Have you read We're Taking Everyone Down with Us?" I haven't.
No, I don't know that one.
Um,
I'm trying to read more outside the box, so like more indies, more minor publisher books by people that are new to me, like Josh Schmalke. I only actually know of his work because during an episode of Recent Reads with we had Justin McNamara on, and he was doing a review of um, we something about spiders. We kill spiders, or we don't kill spiders, which was another book by Josh Schmalke, and I was very much interested in picking up. I'm funnily, I'm not, we don't kill spiders. That's the name of the book. Um, I'm not a huge horror movie guy, um, but I love horror books. So I love horror comics. I love horror novels. But I'm not really a guy who sits down and likes to watch horror movies. So anytime someone points out something that's good in the sort of the realm that I do enjoy, I like to check it out. Um, and I'm hoping that I'll get that same feel from 7 Years in Darkness. something that's a little bit scary as well.
Yeah, cool. So Jeffrey says that the writer is Matthew Rosenberg. So
I know Matthew
I
Rosenberg.
haven't heard of that guy.
Yeah, I've heard of his work. I believe I follow him on Instagram, maybe even. The name sounds familiar anyway.
So for me, I'm basically trying to get through my to read pile. There's some of it's here you can see, but I have about 400 books to get through, and I keep buying more and not reading them. So there's a lot of stuff. So I'm not really up to date with all um the new stuff coming out. Mostly the new stuff that I'll check out is Australian, like indie stuff, because a lot of the um well, just most of the books coming out now just don't interest me at all. So I kind of like I'm old and set in my ways, and I like the stuff I like. So I've got tons and tons of that shit that I haven't read. So um, yeah, just trying to get through all that stuff. And Nick May says same. My to read pile is intimidating. Yeah, I've got about four of them scattered around the house. So it's it's good fun. It's a part of being a collector. Is you're gonna collect, I suppose.
I think I can't remember the terminology, but there's like um, in Japanese culture they talk about how like buying books isn't necessarily about buying them and intending to immediately go home and read it. It's like the joy of also knowing that you have it there and you could read it if you wanted to. It's like that's separate to the book itself. Yeah. I think we all fall into that category. It's like we just like knowing that our to read pile is there for us in our time of need.
Yeah, I like that. Um, what else? As far as for me for stuff coming out, looking forward to. Um, I can't think of anything right now. Oh, except for the Ewoks. I want to collect this one, see how far it goes. It's cool with this book that they've got the same creative team for 4 issues in a row. So hopefully they've got it worked out that they can keep it up, because it's apparently very rare for a creative team to stay in a book for very long, or to be able to get a consistent uh, book out these days.
Oh, you just reminded me. You just reminded me. I don't know why you reminded me just now, but book I'm looking forward to. It's coming out in August. It is the prequel to the movie Event Horizon,
Oh,
and it's being illustrated by Tristan Jones, his return to comics after quite a long time away. Um, and he's been posting a lot of teaser images on his Instagram for like some of the interior design work for the ship and all that sort of stuff. And it looks like it's going to be super creepy, super cool. Um, yes, completely forgot about that. But yes, that's probably the book I'm looking forward to the most.
alrighty. So I think we'll call it there for this week's episode of Comics Are Rad. Um, so thanks to Ryan for showing up again and telling us about Andor. And we'll be back next week at same time with another episode of Comics Are Rad. And God, on Sundays I do a drawing stream with Sis as my co-host. So that should be on this Sunday. And Shawnee says Sundoku collecting books as a source of anticipation.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
And thanks to the chat, Shawnee, Nick, Jeffrey, and Panda for showing up and watching us have a chat. Um, yeah, don't forget that comics are rad, and try and read some more. And we'll see you next week. And I'm gonna press the stop streaming button. See you later, everyone.